is seeing emerging conflicts between science and religion. He thought it was evident enough in people like Hobbes and Spinoza, conflicts between science and religion, and fairly widespread, way beyond those individuals. Mechanistic science poses problems for Christianity. Problems about human freedom, problems about the human soul, problems, therefore, about a future life, and problems about the nature of God and how he is related to, how he relates to the world of nature. And because of these implicit problems within mechanistic science, accepted as a philosophy that tells you about the ultimate nature of reality, he rejects mechanistic science as an account of the ultimate nature of reality. He's an anti-realist about mechanistic science, though a realist about the kind of science he envisions. Now, I might add that Leibniz was not professionally an academic. He was a German diplomat, constantly engaged in shuttle diplomacy, constantly on the road, which is why he doesn't write a long systematic treatise like Spinoza, but the shorter works that we have some of in the anthology. He's concerned about the religious wars that were raging throughout Europe in the day, and is trying to work for a united Europe and a united Christendom. So he's trying to engage in those kinds of negotiations. And of course, in order to do that, bringing together opposing, conflicting parties, he needs something of a philosophical worldview to provide some foundations to which to appeal, you see. And he's convinced that a mechanistic science which can only talk of opposing forces cannot impart any sense of purpose, underlying purpose, which can provide the basis for the kind of Europe that he envisions. So the conflict between religion and science. Now, in effect, what we see when we get to Leibniz is a questioning not only of the mechanistic system and the devising of a new system that will focus more effectively on the human mind and human freedom, not only a questioning of the mechanistic system, but also a questioning of the rationalist approach. What you find in Leibniz is theological ideas feeding into his thinking in a way in which they did not in Spinoza and not even in Descartes. Descartes was content with conclusions that harmonized with his religion. What Leibniz is after is some underlying vision of a purposeful creator, active in the creation, you see. And that's what runs throughout his whole thinking. Now, with that in mind, one step further, and still by way of introduction, quite evidently, from what I've said so far, the crux of the matter for Leibniz is going to be the concept of substance. The concept of substance. He is opposed to Descartes' view of substance, material substance in this case, as simply extended stuff occupying space. Because that notion of matter fails to explain other very basic properties of material bodies, such as inertia. The fact that a body continues in the state of motion or rest, in which it naturally is. And he therefore argues that extension is not a basic primary property, it's derivative rather than basic. An extended substance is a composite of more basic ingredients. And the properties of extension are due to the relationships between those basic ingredients, rather than being simply compilations of extended substances, the way Democritus and the atomists have said. A body is a composite of non-extended entities, and extension is a result of the composite. The ultimate ingredients of substance, therefore, are what he calls monads. And they, the basic units of all reality, they are units of force, energy, rather than units of extended stuff. Okay. Now, by the same token, he is dissatisfied with Spinoza's conception of substance. Because with Spinoza's determinism, there is nothing really contingent in the entirety of nature. Everything has its own necessities. And there is no contingency on the incidental, accidental, that may happen. He does not like the Aristotelian conception of substance, because for Aristotle, a primary substance is still a composite rather than what's basic. And even Aristotle's analysis of substance into prime matter and form doesn't tell us enough about matter. Prime matter does not explain inertia any more than Descartes' concept of substance explained inertia. And when he looks at Newton's physics, he dislikes Newton's conceptions, not only of matter, substance, but of space and time. Because this uniform, infinite, empty space, which has fixed locations where you can put substances, says Newton, is a sheer abstraction with no basis at all in reality. So he argues for the relativity of time and space. Relativity in 1700. Okay? Now, I realize the debate over which came first, science or philosophy, is sort of like the chicken and the egg debate. But it's very interesting to see how Democritus was hundreds of years before mechanistic science, and Leibniz a couple of hundred before what came later. Well, here's what he says about space. As for my own opinion, I've said more than once that I hold space to be something merely relative. I hold it to be an order of coexistences, as time is an order of successive events. For space denotes, in terms of possibility, an order of things existing at the same time, considered as existing together. And when many things are seen together, one perceives the order of things among themselves. And then a little later he says, in fact in the next paragraph, space is absolutely uniform, without things placed in it. One point of space does not absolutely differ in any respect from another point of space. From hence it follows that it's impossible there should be any reason why God, notice how God is involved in having reasons, you see. It's impossible that there should be a reason why God, preserving the same situation of bodies among themselves, should have placed them in space in one way and not another way, or why everything wasn't placed in an entirely contrary way by changing east into west. If space is nothing else than order, relation, nothing at all without bodies, then those two states, one such as it now is, the other, the quite contrary, wouldn't differ at all one from another, if space is entirely empty and nothing. Space is the empty possibility of ordered relationships of things in time. Well, the same is the case with respect to time. Supposing anyone should ask, why did God create everything a year sooner? And the same person should infer that God has done something concerning which 'tis not possible that there should be a reason why he did so and not otherwise. The answer is that this inference would be right if time was anything distinct from things existing in time. If there were no events of a space-time sort, there would be no time. You see. So he abandons the Newtonian conceptions of space and time. Now, what's happening? There are four key concepts of mechanistic science, Newtonian science. Matter, force or matter, motion, motion explained in terms of forces, matter, motion, space, time. Space and time by themselves are nothing. The words don't refer to anything. Matter and motion are not the ultimates. The ultimate is force, energy. So what you have is a complete rejection of the four key concepts of Newtonian physics, replacing it with a conception of force or energy in a teleological system. God's purposes to be involved. Well, let me pause there. We have a few moments. Questions, comments? Or do you want me to go on and elaborate on his monads and monadology? I gather you do. Dr. Chappell?